My hand froze on the glass door handle. I could hear her voice cutting through the conference room like a razor, sharp, amused, and absolutely vicious. Harper's laughter filled the silence between her words, and I felt my stomach drop. I wasn't supposed to hear this. Nobody was supposed to hear this, but here I was, stuck outside like an eavesdropper at my own downfall. I pressed my ear closer to the door, even though every part of me wanted to run away. My report, my research, my months of sleepless nights, everything I'd poured into this project was about to become someone else's victory lap. I could hear chairs shifting inside, someone whistling low in what sounded like admiration. That sound made my hands clench into fists. They were impressed. They were actually impressed by her lying. Then came the words that nearly knocked me to the ground. "She won't say anything," Harper said casually like she was discussing the weather. "Lauren never does. She's too scared to speak up." More laughter. My face burned hot and cold. At the same time, I swallowed hard, tasting something bitter in the back of my throat. "I'm Lauren Ridge, Senior Data Analyst at Meridian Solutions. I've been here for 4 years, building my reputation piece by piece. Clean records, solid work, problem-solving skills that people actually respect. I've missed family dinners for deadline rushes. I've rewritten reports at 3 in the morning because I knew they could be better. I've sat in meetings and listened to my ideas praised when other people said them first, but none of that mattered right now. None of it meant anything. Because the woman I trusted, the woman I'd defended when others talked behind her back, had just stabbed me in it. Hard. 6 months earlier, Harper Quinn walked into our office like she owned the place. Designer heels clicked against the tile floor. Her smile was practiced, rehearsed, absolutely perfect. She'd been promoted to team manager 2 weeks before, and she was making her rounds, meeting everyone, building her image. She placed a hand on my shoulder, and her touch felt warm, genuine, almost motherly. "You're brilliant, Lauren," she said, looking directly into my eyes. "I need you. I need someone I can trust." I believed her. I actually believed every single word. Her eyes looked kind. Her voice sounded sincere. I didn't understand then that Harper had a special talent for seeing people and figuring out exactly what they needed to hear. More importantly, I didn't know that Harper only loved people she could use. She loved people she could stand on top of. People who'd help her climb higher. I was about to become one of those people, whether I wanted to or not. It started small, innocent enough that I almost didn't notice. Harper began praising certain co-workers during team meetings, the ones who laughed at her jokes, the ones who flirted just enough to seem interested but not desperate. Mark from accounting, Victoria from communications, people who knew how to play the game. But when I presented ideas, when I contributed something solid and thoughtful, Harper would pull me aside afterward. "You need to stay humble," she'd whisper, her hand on my arm. "Don't overshadow others. People get intimidated when someone's too smart." I thought that she meant well. I really did. I thought she was protecting me, teaching me office politics the way someone who actually cared would. Now I realized she was keeping me small. She was filing away my ideas like ammunition, learning my strengths so she could exploit them later. She was training me to be quiet, to take up less space, to become invisible. And I walked right into the trap with my eyes wide open. The first public humiliation came 3 months after she arrived. Team meeting, 15 people around a long wooden table. I'd spent 2 weeks on this quarterly insight, analysing our customer retention rates and finding patterns nobody else had spotted. I was nervous but ready. I stood up, clicked to my first slide, and started explaining my findings. I was maybe 30 seconds in when Harper's voice cut me off. "Lauren, that's confusing," she said, shaking her head. "Maybe sit down and let someone else clarify." Her smile was fake, like something made of plastic. She flicked her hand dismissively and I felt my face burning. The room went silent. Everyone was staring. I sat down without saying anything else, my heart pounding so hard I thought my ribs might crack. Then Mark from accounting repeated my exact point word for word, but he simplified it, made it easier to follow. Harper smiled at him like he'd just invented electricity. She even applauded. I watched her praise him for saying what I'd said. The injustice was suffocating. I started hearing the whispers, fragments in the break room, pieces of conversations that stopped when I walked in. One afternoon, I pushed open the break room door and heard Harper's voice clearly. She's too emotional for leadership. She gets upset too easily. The room fell silent instantly. Everyone turned toward me like I'd caught them doing something wrong. Harper smiled, sugary sweet and totally fake. "Lauren, want coffee?" I felt my hands tighten on my water bottle. I didn't answer. I just turned around and left. But inside, something was shifting. The hurt was still there, but now it was mixing with something else, something harder, something colder. I started noticing patterns. Harper criticized me in private and praised me to my face. She asked for my work and then took credit for the completed projects. She isolated me from the rest of the team by spreading rumors while smiling like my friend. She was smart about it. Evil, but smart. Then came the big one. The executives launched a new initiative, high profile, high stakes, the kind of project that could make a career. Harper called me into her office and asked me to lead the data strategy. My heart jumped. Finally, I thought. Finally, someone saw what I could do. Harper's smile was almost too bright, almost too perfect. "Don't mess it up," she whispered as I left. Something in her voice made my skin prickle with warning, but I pushed the feeling down. This was my chance to prove myself. I wasn't going to waste it. I threw myself into the work immediately. I pulled reports, analysed databases, created frameworks, built models. I worked so hard that my roommate started asking if I still lived at home. I barely slept. I barely ate. I had tunnel vision for one thing and one thing only: making this project perfect. 2 days before the draft deadline, Harper called me into her office again. "I can't find your files," she said, not looking up from her computer. My heart stopped. "What do you mean you can't find them?" She gestured vaguely at her screen. "I checked the shared folder. Everything's gone." I felt the blood drain from my face. I'd uploaded everything to the shared drive, all my research, my analysis, my frameworks, everything was there. I rushed to my desk and checked. The folder was empty, completely wiped clean. My first thought was that it was an accident, a server glitch or something, but then I found the deletion logs. Someone had manually removed every single file, someone with access to those folders, someone like a manager. Harper came over and leaned on my desk, her expression all sympathy. "I guess you'll have to redo it," she said, shrugging like it was nothing, like I hadn't just lost weeks of work. Like she hadn't just destroyed it on purpose. I stayed up all night rebuilding everything, my hands shaking with a mix of exhaustion and rage. 3 a.m. Cold coffee that tasted like regret. My burning eyes could barely focus on the screen anymore. I was rebuilding the entire project from scratch, working from backup files and my own notes. And somewhere around the 3rd hour, something clicked inside my head. A realization that was chilling and terrible and absolutely true. Harper never wanted me to shine. She wanted my work. She wanted to take everything I'd built, everything I'd created, and present it as her own. She wanted the credit without doing the work. She wanted the praise without earning it. She wanted to be brilliant without having to be brilliant. And she'd been using me this whole time to make that happen. I felt something inside me change. The hurt transformed into something else entirely. Something cold, something dangerous. Something that felt a lot like clarity. Draft review day arrived. My slides appeared on the projector screen, my formatting, my color scheme, my charts, my headers, everything exactly the way I'd designed it. Harper stood in front of the room with a wireless remote, polished and confident, and utterly fake. "These were my insights," she announced to the executives. "This is the data strategy I've developed for the company." The executives nodded along, impressed. They asked questions, and Harper answered them. Sometimes she answered them correctly, Sometimes she stumbled. Every time she stumbled, I felt something like satisfaction wash through my chest. She was taking credit for work she didn't understand. She didn't even flinch when she got details wrong. She just smiled and moved on. I sat there in the back of the room, completely invisible, watching my work get stolen in real time. Back to the present. I was still standing outside the glass conference room, listening to Harper's laughter echo down the hallway. Something clicked inside me, cold, sharp, precise, like a lock falling into place. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream or cry. I stood there very still and I listened to every single word she said. I memorized the exact tone of her voice when she boasted about rewriting my report. I burned into my memory the sound of those executives laughing, approving, impressed by her lies. She thought I was weak. She thought I was the kind of person who'd just accept this and move on. She thought I was defeated. Perfect. That assumption was going to cost her everything. That night I made a plan. Not a revenge plan, not something angry or stupid. Just a plan rooted in truth. I started documenting everything carefully, emails where Harper took credit for my work, timestamps showing when I created files, version histories from our shared drive, screenshots of my original drafts, server logs showing the deletion. I organized everything in a clean chronological file on my personal computer. I didn't go to HR immediately. I didn't email anyone or make accusations. I just gathered the truth and held it close, waiting for the right moment. Some people might call that revenge. I called it justice. Harper asked me to clean up her slides before the final executive review. Her tone was smug, dismissive, like I was beneath her. Like my only value was doing her work for her, I said yes without hesitation. Sure, I'll help. She had no idea I was preparing something she wouldn't see coming, something honest, something true, something well-deserved. I went back to my desk and kept gathering evidence. I found more deleted files. I found evidence of other projects where she'd done the same thing to different people. She was a serial thief of other people's work. It was a pattern. It was systematic. And I was going to prove it. Harper called me to her office the day before the presentation. She didn't look up from her screen while I stood in the doorway. "Don't try to speak during tomorrow's meeting," she said casually. "I'll handle it. You'll just confuse people." My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. I'd spent months on this project. I'd bled for this work. And she was telling me to be silent. I took a breath and nodded. "Of course," I said softly, keeping my voice level. Inside, though, I was counting down the hours. I was ready. That evening, an email arrived in my inbox. It was from one of the executives, the lead executive on the project. "Lauren, can you bring your raw data to tomorrow's presentation?" the email read. "I want to ask a few questions about your methodology." My heart jumped. This was unexpected. This was perfect. Harper didn't know about this email. She had no idea. I replied immediately. "Absolutely. Thank you for asking." I hit send and smiled for the first time in months. In the elevator the next morning, Harper stood beside me, fixing her lip gloss in a compact mirror. "You look tired," she observed, not even glancing at me. I smiled gently, tilting my head just slightly. "Didn't sleep much," I admitted. She smirked, assuming it was fear, assuming I was terrified about the presentation, assuming I was panicking because she'd told me to be quiet. "You'll be fine," she said, patting my shoulder condescendingly. It was preparation, though. She just didn't know it yet. She had no idea what was about to happen. The conference room was packed. Executives, department heads, the CEO's assistant, everyone important was there. Harper began presenting, and she was incredible. She was charismatic, dazzling, dripping with confidence. She moved through the slides like she'd created them yesterday. She told the story of the project beautifully. Her voice didn't waver once. She was completely convincing. And then the lead executive raised his hand. "Lauren," he said, turning to me, "could you walk us through the raw sources?" I'd like to understand your methodology better. The room went quiet. Harper's face drained of colour so fast it was almost funny. I calmly opened my laptop. I pulled up my documentation. I showed them timestamps, version histories, server logs, nothing dramatic, nothing accusatory, just facts presented clearly and professionally. The initial analysis began on March 15th, I explained, pointing to the dates. The framework was completed by April 23rd. Version histories showed 12 iterations before the final draft. Harper tried to interrupt. I supervised this work, but I kept going. I showed them the server logs. The deletion records showed exactly when files had been removed and who had access to that system. The data was irrefutable. Harper never even opened those files. She couldn't have supervised work she'd never accessed. A murmur spread across the table. The lead executive leaned forward, his expression hardening. Harper, why do your slides contain formatting from Lauren's personal template, the one with the unique colour palette? Harper's breath caught visibly. She started sweating. Her practiced smile flickered like a dying light bulb. She was crumbling right in front of everyone. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Lauren must have... But there was no good explanation. There was no lie that would work here. The truth was sitting right in front of them. Impossible to deny. I didn't have to lift a finger to destroy her. She was doing it all by herself. Executives exchanged looks with each other. One cleared his throat. Harper, step outside for a moment, the CEO said quietly. Her hands shook as she gathered her tablet. She wouldn't meet my eyes as she stood up. She knew. They all knew. The door closed behind her, and I felt something loosen in my chest. A weight I'd been carrying for months finally started to lift. The air felt different. Everything felt different. The room turned to me. The lead executive leaned forward, his expression serious, but fair. Lauren, how long has this been happening? My voice was steady when I answered. I'd rehearsed this moment so many times in my head. I can only speak to the data and the work, I said calmly. The timeline is documented. The evidence is clear. I didn't give them drama. I didn't make accusations beyond what the facts showed. I didn't cry or get angry. I just presented the truth with dignity and let it speak for itself. That was enough. It was more than enough. A week later, Harper was removed from her managerial role pending a full review. No screaming, no confrontation between us, no dramatic confrontation, just consequences quietly delivered by the company. No one fired her immediately, but everyone understood that her time was ending. Her arrogance had dug the hole. All I did was let her keep digging. The other employees started talking. They started comparing notes. More stories emerged. More projects where she'd stolen credit. More people came forward. It turned out Harper had been doing this for years. I was called into the senior office. The CEO sat behind his big desk, his expression thoughtful. We want to offer you a new position, he said. Project lead? You'd have your own team. You'd oversee the data division. My heart soared, but I kept my expression neutral. This wasn't happening because Harper fell. This was happening because I'd proven myself. I'd done incredible work. I'd earned this. I accept, I said simply. We shook hands, and I walked out with a promotion I'd deserved all along. A few weeks later, Harper walked past my new office. She didn't look at me. Her shoulders slumped like she was carrying an enormous weight. Her designer shoes weren't as shiny anymore. Her hair looked dull. She'd gone from being this confident, untouchable woman to someone completely broken. I didn't smirk. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Truth had done all the heavy lifting. She'd brought this on herself through her own cruelty and dishonesty. I just let the evidence speak for itself. I closed my office door and breathed deeply. For the first time in months, in years really, the air felt light. I'd learned something fundamental about how the world actually works. People think you're weak when they haven't seen what you're capable of. People underestimate you when you're quiet and patient. But patience isn't weakness. Silence isn't acceptance. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let liars destroy themselves with their own lies. You never have to destroy anyone. You just let them destroy themselves. I walked away stronger, not bitter. I was angry, yes, but that anger had transformed into something better. It had transformed into power. And that was the real revenge.